Hello, this is Todd Hubbs, agricultural economist at the University of Illinois. Today I'm talking about soybean export potential for the 18-19 marketing year in my December 10th weekly outlook. We saw soybean prices rally after the G20 summit as we, got an extension on the possible escalation of tariffs on China from January 1st to what looks like March 1st. And there's been a lot of talk about China entering the U.S. soybean market. We've yet to see that materialize, and I think the risk associated with doing that from Chinese buyers and the stocks they have on hand, we'll see that continue as we move into 2019. Currently we've got census data through October, and exports are definitely down over what we normally see on very weak demand from China, but there has been strong demand from places like the European Union and Argentina that have mitigated some of the worst case scenarios in soybean exports for the marketing year. To give an idea of the current pace, I've plotted September and October exports, the cumulative sum over the last three marketing years. And as you can see in 18-19, we're at about 325 million bushels through the first 2 months, well down from what we normally do. When you look country by country, you can see the drop off in China, the increase in the EU. Mexico has been a strong importer, but places like Argentina, which suffered from a drought last year, have been importing beans. Egypt, Pakistan, some of the places, Iran, some of the places we normally see Brazil export to have come into the U.S. market, which has mitigated some of the problem. Overall, we're seeing soybean exports down quite a bit. When we look at total commitments through November 29th from the export sales report, we're at about 887 million bushels, which would put us at 47% of the marketing year total of 1.9 billion. Over the last 5 marketing years, that normally has ranged between 64 and 84% of the total marketing year when we get through October. And a lot of this is the seasonality we see in exports. Our strong months are usually October through January. Sometimes it'll extend a little bit, and then as South American production comes online, we sort of fall off in the last half of the marketing year as China switches their suppliers. I think we're going to see a more muted version of this year, and while we have hope for a trade deal moving forward, one of the most concerning things that I've heard over the last couple of weeks is the incoming buying of Brazilian soybeans after March from places like Taiwan and Japan, as post-harvest soybean price in Brazil, when you take into account protein differential and transportation cost, are on par with the U.S. prices after March. So that's something to keep track of as we move through the rest of this marketing year. The potential for a large crop in South America is definitely going to cause competitiveness to increase in the soybean export market for U.S. farmers in 2019. Right now, the World Production Report for the 2019 crop in South America is at about 7.02 billion bushels. Now that's for Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Uruguay, with Brazil being the major player in that. Right now, they've got Brazilian production set with a 47.7 trend yield. With the way the crops got off to a start down there, timely planting, decent weather, there are a few dry spots, but nothing serious. The idea of a 50.5 yield is not, I think, out of the question. On the current Brazil production forecast, we're about 4.42 billion bushels. With a 50.5, we'd be at 4.7 billion bushels. There are some market observers in Brazil calling for 130 million metric ton production, which would be well over 4.7 billion bushels. So when we think about the potential for a large South American crop, the current trade issues we're under, and the weak start to the exports for the U.S. so far this marketing year, that 1.9 billion bushels, there's been some market observers thinking that might come down. I think it's pretty close to where we'll be when it's all said and done. But there is definite weakness and concern in the soybean export market, and a large South American crop's not going to help that any. Overall, when we look at the soybean export potential for 2018-19 marketing year, the current 1.9 billion bushels is probably a decent estimate. There's still a lot of uncertainty regarding the number of soybeans China might buy from the U.S., and I don't expect to see a large amount of purchasing from China anytime soon. with a large South American crop coming online maybe as early as late January, if we see record crops in Brazil and a recovery from the drought-induced production in Argentina, we might lose that Argentinian market as we move into 2019 and see increased competitiveness from Brazil. So a lot of the uncertainty is on the downside right now for soybean exports, and I think we should keep that in mind. Well, thank you for your time. You can find my weekly outlook and daily analysis of issues related to Corn Belt farm economics at farm.daily.illinois.edu. I look forward to seeing you around the state of Illinois.